It is 7 o'clock now, so I'll go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Newberg Historical Commission. We had an agenda just a second ago, but yeah, thank you. That's always helpful. The first order of business is our roll call.
Right. Commissioner Watson.
Here.
Commissioner Mansfield.
Here.
Commissioner Woodruff.
Here.
Commissioner Hughes is out. Commissioner Burkle. And Commissioner Engstrom.
Here.
Yes, thank you. So.
Next up, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody, if you could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one staff person, Clay Downing, is here virtually this evening. He's not feeling real well, so he just wanted to be cautious and stay at home and get hot soup and tea and stay healthy. So thanks for joining us today, Clay. Do we have any public comments tonight?
We do, but it's in relation to our item, so we'll move forward with that item.
Then our one item on the meeting tonight is a quasi judicial hearing for modification of a designated historic landmark at 800 East 3rd Street. And I don't know, Rachel or Clay, do you want to present the basic information?
Yeah, Clay's going to give that presentation. Clay, do you want me to push the slides through, or would you rather share them on your screen?
Why don't you go ahead and push them through, and I'll try and say, and on the next slide, give
All
you
right.
saying I'm ready. So Chair, Commissioners, thank you for hearing this and making time for this item. We know it was a special meeting that was requested by the applicant, so the applicant expressed to me that they appreciate it. They may say so in their own terms too. But also, I'm not sick anymore. I'm on the road to recovery, but I also, if anything's lingering, didn't want to share it with anyone. So we're doing this remotely, so I appreciate it. So this is a historic landmark review for modification of a historic resource, also referred to as the Wilson House at 800 East 3rd Street. And the following information is essentially sharing what's in your staff report that was shared with you a week ago. So the applicant is Judy Holzenagel. This is for modification. I don't know why the word relocation is still in there, but it looks like it is, but it's for modification, has nothing to do with relocation. I think that's relic from our last item. It's at 800 East 3rd Street. It's located in the R2 or medium density residential zone. It's the criteria that were evaluated are all from the historic landmarks subdistrict, which is in Newberg Municipal Code 15.344. And those bullets that you see on this slide, purpose, Historic Preservation Commission review, and alteration, new construction, demolitions, those are all things we'll talk about later in later slides here. And on the next slide, I'm going to go through a couple of site photos. So just comparing what we have today on the right with a photo that's from the Historic Resources Inventory. Obviously, it's not that early associated with historic era because we can see a car in the driveway, but it is one of the ones that we have showing what it's looked like a number of years ago. And on the next slide, we have a few more site photos. In the upper left here, we have an aerial map that just shows the site photos. So that bright blue box is circling the property. You can kind of see the intersection of fronting onto East 3rd Street there. Then as we look at the lower street, or sorry, lower site photo, we have the street frontage. We're looking at the property. That's the house that we see kind of in the shade between the two dominant trees. We have a small alley on the left. So that is not a road, that is an alley, which is what I wanted to highlight in the upper right-hand portion of this slide. So in the upper right-hand, looking into the alley, there's a bit of an accessory structure that's tucked into the rear corner of the property. And you can see a bit of a vehicle poking out from behind there. And so where that vehicle is pulled into is more or less going to be where the carport is my understanding. I'm looking at the site photos. So then on the next slide, we show highlights of some of the surrounding area and what we have there. So on the left-hand side of this slide, we have a utilities map, the blue line that's going along 3rd Street as well as South Edward Street. That has to do with the water lines on the property. This one takes water on the meter that is located on the north side of the property towards the top of the map. Then there's also storm infrastructure, which is the gold and yellow stuff that's kind of the top left corner of that map. Then on the right hand of this slide, we see that the R2 zone is what we have on this property, but there's R3 or high density residential located just north of the property. And we have a bit of C3 zoning or downtown commercial that's located diagonal to the northwest of the property. And then on the next slide, we'll start looking into some of the information associated with the more about the kind of the description of the project. So here, what this says in this text that I've got in summary, kind of talks about what's being proposed. So what they're requesting is to modify a designated historic landmark, the residence. And that modification is replacing an existing detached carport, which is not historic, and replacing it with an attached garage that would be approximately the same size as the carport that's there now. Both are approximately 468 square feet in size. As they've proposed, and as you can see in the application materials, the proposed siding that they're going to have for this addition would actually match what they have from a prior edition from approximately 2004 that was also reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. And then on the next slide, we go a little to the historic character. So this is a statement, I believe this is the statement of significance from the historic inventory and specifically from the historic resource survey form. But to me, a few of the things that are worth highlighting here that come out of the inventory in a couple of different spots is, one, this is identified as field number 70. It's located in the Nob Hill area. That's also referred to as concentration area A. It's considered a secondary resource. And a secondary resource is defined as resources are secondary resources being properties which are not outstanding for distinctiveness or rarity, but nonetheless are of individual importance based on architectural, historical, and environmental criteria. And this gets talked about in a few places in the staff report and in the findings for the criteria that were used for evaluation. So in this case, the building's considered significant for establishing historic character for the area, so for kind of the neighborhood and setting, and maintaining the integrity of its design and materials, which we'll go into later when we talk about some of the architectural features. The historic resources profile also goes on to note that the setting of the landmark is located in an area, sorry, I went over this already, but in that Nob Hill area. So it's a residential neighborhood area. And another part of that is being associated with Charles B. Wilson, a historic figure that was important to some of Newberg's early and founding days. So going on to the next slide, we're going to start looking at some of the criteria. So this again is highlighting some of the criteria that were used in evaluation. So hopefully these look relatively familiar from going through the staff report. And so on the next slide, we're going to start with that purpose statement. So here we have the bullet points associated with that purpose overlay. So we're looking at text that's coming out of the Newberg Municipal Code. So some of the things to keep in mind is that the application materials submitted indicate that the applicant is proposing to maintain the historic landmark designation for this structure, and that the addition's expected to be reasonably compatible with the structure's historic character. So in the staff report, we go on to make the finding that this criterion associated with the purpose, which is not strictly a criteria in the biggest sense, but it is a broad goal that we would want to meet for the historic subdistrict, that the historic character being maintained will be met if we are in compliance with the other criteria that are evaluated as part of the staff report. So it's a bit of a cascade effect. So we're kind of deferring to make sure that if we can meet those other criteria, we should also meet the purpose of this, is essentially what it's being said in the staff report. Then on the next slide, we're going to move on to the Historic Preservation Commission review. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here that's in the staff report is there's no other discretionary review associated with this particular application. So this is not going to have to go to the Planning Commission. It does not need to go to the City Council for anything. They will have to submit for building permits associated with the addition, but there's no other special review. And in situations like this, the Historic Preservation Commission is given the duties and authority of the Planning Commission in its quasi-judicial capacity. And so that your commission is going to be evaluating this evening, deciding whether to approve with conditions, or deny the application before you. And that's because the only criteria being evaluated are those in the Newberg Municipal Code, Chapter 15.344 for the Historic Landmark Subdistrict. And then on the next slide, we'll start getting into the beefier criteria. So some of these have longer lists. I'm going to try not to make them too terrible, but I will be available to answer questions or clarify things when we get through them. But again, all of this is in the staff report, and also happy to clarify anything at the end in the staff report or from the staff report. So this one highlights, this is under that NMC 15344.030 related to alterations, new construction and demolitions. Specifically, we're going to be staying under subheading A, associated with exterior alterations. So we really won't be evaluating things associated with new construction and demolitions. But the application process is the first of the criteria. For this one, we conducted a completeness review at submittal. So they submitted on June 13th of 2024, and then it was deemed complete on June 24th. So when we do that, we make sure that we've been given all the information that we feel is necessary for conducting a review. The applicant gave us that, so we feel that this was able to be deemed as met. Then on the next slide, we continue with those exterior alteration conditions. And this one is a multi-step one that's related to historic character of the property. So I'm going to try and go through these one at a time. So associated with average setback, because the addition is located out of the front setback area and is larger than the main building's existing 28-foot setback, it was determined that the average setback will not be affected. Essentially, what's being proposed is approximately 50 feet off of the front property line, and the building itself is about 28 feet off the property line. So it shouldn't have an impact or really change that street character that you would expect for an average setback. So the home should still be the focus point for that sort of thing. The second one here, number 2, architectural elements. So the addition is to the east side of the building and is not proposing to modify architectural features that were identified as significant to the structure. So the historic resource form identified several things as being significant to the structure and why it's designated as a historical resource, including the gable roof, the vertical massing, double hung sash windows, and those sorts of features. But this is something that will replace a carport, will attach to a sidewall of the home. So in the evaluation, it was not felt that it modified any of those significant architectural resource or architectural features. The building orientation itself will not be changed. It will still face the same street. This will not modify that, so it was not deemed as being applicable. Vehicle parking and storage. The main building facade is set back from East 3rd Street by about 28 feet. The addition is going to be set back by approximately 50 feet again. And the vehicle parking and storage, in this case, they've agreed that they will not be trying to mimic the historic resource, but they will be compatible with it, which is typically what we want. If you recall from other hearings that we've had, it is the desire that when we do additions, they're supposed to be compatible, but we don't want to create a Disney type of effect where we're trying to mimic a historic resource. We want to recognize the historic resource itself is special and leave this as being something that is compatible but different. And they've said they'll do that. And then this last one, fences, was deemed as not applicable because there are no fences proposed to be modified or added to the property. So on the next slide, we'll continue with a few other criteria. So this one's my beefiest slide. It's the second to last slide. So I'm going to try and go through these. If you have questions, I feel like they could be on these, but this is again going through these criteria, but they're all still under those exterior alterations to properties. So record of time, place, and use. So again, this is something that it was identified as a secondary resource based on its architectural, historical, and environmental criteria. It's considered an example of a vernacular style and also significant contributions to setting, as well as its association with Charles B. Wilson as a significant figure, and the general location, that Nob Hill district that we talked about before. The proposed project really doesn't wasn't felt to compromise those because it's not modifying the architectural elements. It'll still continue to be a residence, and it doesn't really modify the association with Charles B. Wilson. So it was determined that this addition is not going to be compromising that record of time, place, and use associated with that. So then there's the next criteria associated with changes that have acquired historic significance in their own right. So based on what we had ahead of us and looking through other records that the city had on file, as well as the application materials, the most recent addition did not fall into the category of having gained significance in own right. We didn't have any records or see anything that had been added to the property over time that appeared to comply with this. And so based on what we had in the record, this criterion was also determined as not applicable. Distinctive features. In essence, because the project was not going to have an impact on some of the distinctive features that are identified in the historic resources inventory, this criteria was determined to be met. Some of those things that were considered distinctive, that we considered if they had, then we might have considered that impact would have been the intersecting gable, the double hung sash. It's also got architectural molding associated with it, flash glass, brackets, pendants, frieze, barge boards, and a polygonal bay. So there's a number of features that we could have looked at, but this, because it's something that's attaching to an area that's going to give egress and allow the historic resource to continue being used as a residence, we felt that this impact was going to be negligible because of what was being proposed here. We still have a couple more. If we go back to the last slide, please. Oh. That one. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. So I think that was distinctive features. So now we're going to E. So deteriorated features. This is not a project that's related to repairing deteriorated features. So this one was not applicable. F, related to surface cleaning. That's also not part of the scope of work here. So that one was also determined not to be applicable. Architectural resources. None of the records we have show that we expect any particular architectural resources to be present on the site. So this one was not applicable. And then H, new additions, exterior alterations, and related construction. This one when I went through the criteria for this and I, historic character and also essential integrity and form, these were somewhat evaluating some similar things. So there were a few things. And we go back to some of the things I mentioned before about how it will still be, will it still be a residence? Will it still be part of preserving that character of Newberg as having a past, a history that's significant? And will it continue preserving something associated with the historic figure in Newberg? And will it do so by making a change that is compatible but does not mimic that historic character that the property already has? And it was determined for some of the reasons that were stated earlier that yes, it would do something. They've identified that they will be distinguishing the addition in a way that is compatible with the existing historic resource and will not be a negative impact on it. And so the historic character would be maintained. Further, when we consider the essential form and integrity, there's also mention in number I, if you look at the full text, where we talk about future removal, so that you're supposed to preserve the integrity of the main building and consider if something happened, could the historic portion of the property be unimpaired for the foreseeable future or perhaps used for something else? And this, because it's a simple attachment of a garage, while it would require some work to remove that, should someone choose to do so in the future, you don't damage the holistic integrity associated with the building by simply doing an addition to a non-habitable space or a garage. So this was determined to be met as well. It's one of the criteria. And those are the criteria that were evaluated. On the next slide, you have the recommendation from staff. So staff is recommending that your commission move to adopt Historic Preservation Commission Order 2024003, which approves the requested modification of a historic landmark. And that is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Clay. I do have a couple questions. The architectural compatibility, how is that determined? Are there criteria to determine architectural compatibility? And if so, who approves that?
When you say are you referring to the criteria associated with A3 little a? That kind of, I think, Rachel, it's about 3 slides back from, is it this one that you're asking about? Could you clarify for me what you mean by architectural compatibility, or what criteria we're discussing?
Here, but basically you were talking about that this had to be, it couldn't mimic, but it should be compatible. And so my question is, who determines what is compatible? Is there a set of criteria
Sure.
that allows us to address that? And if so, who approves that? Thanks.
Sure. Well, in short, your commission does. So it is discretionary. Architectural compatibility would be highly subjective, and we don't have specific criteria associated with what that is. So when we look at these sorts of things, we do have to ask ourselves, with what they're proposing, will such a modification or addition in this case compromise the integrity of the historic structure? And when we've looked at this, and also because they're trying to do something that will copy exactly what was approved in the past, it seems to me that they're doing probably the thing that we would like them to most do, which is not have more than the 2 styles on the site. But we don't, the code specifically says that we do not want them to mimic it, which they have not, because they're going to use siding that is different. But they are going to use siding that is the same as what was added in 2004. So it maintains a style across the property that distinguishes that historic resource from the contemporary resources that have been added. So from my perspective, without having more of a form-based code that tells me what good and bad might be, this is probably one of the more desirable approaches that they could have taken, in my opinion, as staff.
Thanks, Clay. I don't disagree. Did you have a chance to look at the architectural design for that garage?
I looked at the siding materials and the plans. The application materials include both elevations as well as a site plan. And so I did look at some of those. To me, it's a garage. It's a fairly straightforward use and request. And so it's about what I would expect probably for a garage addition.
Yeah, it looked like the applicant has put in work and done what to me seemed like a good job of matching the siding with the 2004 edition. And I apologize, I didn't have a chance to print out my packet. But is there anything in the drawings that shows what the current roof height is for the carport, the detached carport, and what the roof height would be on the new garage? Just thinking, one of the things it talks about is the vertical massing of the historic house, and how that might impact that massing if it was a significantly different roof height. And I can't remember if that showed that in the packet or not.
My recollection, they may have shared that, but my recollection is the addition is going to be approximately 16 feet tall. And the existing structure, I do not remember how tall it is, but I think that the applicant may be able to answer that for us, or at least give us a good approximation.
And so thank you for coming tonight, and I apologize, we meet differently depending on how the room is configured. Sometimes we meet in the very formal city council style. Often we meet more in a square, more collaborative style. And we try and make these meetings as welcoming and comfortable as possible. It's intimidating to come into a meeting and, wait to hear your fate. So and I appreciate you going through the effort with the historic property to do this, and so if you could just share is what the current roof height is, what the proposed roof height is on the carport and the garage, that'd be helpful.
Chair, I'd like to make a suggestion. So I think it's perfectly okay for the applicant to answer those questions, but I think that if you let them do their public comment period, that might be the more appropriate way to handle those sorts of things so that we don't get too off track for this quasi judicial hearing.
And just make sure, and this is another thing too, I'm new as chair, and so we want to make sure we're meeting all our legal i's and t's. If Clay, and I think this would be okay, if I could just get the factual information and then the comments could be done during the public comment.
I would suggest that we wait till the public hearing is open for public comments.
Okay,
So-
I'll follow Clay's suggestion then.
Sure.
So you guys go ahead and take a seat there so you don't have to go back. Yep, just make it easy.
Sit down, but we'll wait to have you share your comments when we open it up for public comment. And,
Yeah.
and thank you for your patience.
And Chair, I am looking through the application packet. As I look through the staff report and the attachments, I am seeing an elevation for the house, but I'm struggling to find the existing house height unless I might have it, but I'm not sure if I'm reading the illustrations correctly. Which if I'm giving everyone funny looks while I'm up on the screen, I
I'm just
apologize.
giving them a quick rundown on the outline for the hearing. So.
Yeah.
And I apologize, Clay, I got sidetracked there. Were you able to find that information, or were you still?
There's a sheet in the application that's got the elevations, and I am just trying to figure out if I'm reading the drawings correctly because there's a couple of illustrations on a single sheet.
Okay.
And in so I'm still looking for it, but if I can find it, I will be happy to provide it.
While Clay looks for that, I'm gonna pass this around. I just handed Bob a copy and it's our basic outline for public hearing. We've kind of jumped ahead with the staff reports, but we'll let Clay officially give his recommendation again when we get to that portion of this. But I'm gonna pass this around for the committee members so you know what we're doing next.
And then
Right.
Rachel, just so I'm clear now, do I call to order the quasi?
Yeah, so call to order the quasi judicial hearing now.
So we're dotting our i's and crossing our t's legally. I will call to order a public hearing for this quasi judicial review of the application. This is a time when anybody can any of the commission can declare conflicts of interest or abstentions. Are there any to report tonight? Okay. We've had our staff report, so I'll ask again, Clay, if you could repeat what the staff recommendation is.
Nope, did we lose
The
Clay?
staff recommends that the planning commission, or sorry, the staff recommends that your commission, Historic Preservation Commission, move to adopt Historic Preservation Commission Order 2024-003, which approves the requested modification of a historic landmark.
Thank you. And now we will open it up for public testimony. The only public comment that we've had requested are the applicants. And so I will give you 5 minutes to give your public comment. And there's a little red button you need to push on your microphone.
It's gray, it will turn, yeah.
Okay, it's great. Okay.
Is there a question?
Do we have anything to say?
So we do, I had a question about the existing and the proposed roof heights, and then this is just an opportunity for you to share any information that you wanted to further your application.
Well, everything is based around what she's needing for her getting in and out of there in the winter. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on in that alley now that didn't used to go on back there. And so she's feeling, she'd like to, when she pulls in there, she'd like to be safe. So, and she doesn't get around as good as she used to. Me either.
Thanks for that.
So, on that, on that, basically, it's gonna be like an 8-foot wall with a 7-foot by 16-foot garage door, roll-up garage door. But the roof above it it's gonna be a 5 and 12 gable in. Butts up against, I think that pitch on the back is more like, on our existing house is more like a 12 and 12. So we're just pasting that, we're pasting that onto the side of the house where it used to be a lean-to shed. So and continuing it back so she can go, you know, and it, right now it's covered all the way back to where she can get into her kitchen. So we're just enclosing. Does that help? I mean, as far as, yeah, the elevations, I mean, it's pretty much an 8-foot wall with a 5 and 12 pitch truss roof.
So,
Cable in, I'm sorry.
no, are you done? Are you?
I'm done.
Okay, so, there's a lot of activity. It's increased a lot in the alley. You know, there's a lot of, late night foot and bicycle traffic. People stopping in my carport, and I installed cameras because I didn't know what was going on, and now I kind of wish I didn't, but I do. And it's a good thing because people stop, they look in the carport, they walk into the carport. I've not been able to store anything of value in the carport for a number of years. But I do have my car in there. My big thing is well, as somebody said, I'm older and don't get around as well as I used to.
That was me.
I'm aware. And I've had a few back surgeries, and that prevents me from being able to defend myself or hit somebody with my purse or, you know, get away. I can't run away anymore. And so if somebody has an ill intent or, you know, I'm kind of I feel like I'm a prime target. And I do a lot of my errand running at night. In the winter, it's dark at 4 o'clock, you know, so I'm coming and going, and I live alone, so I don't have that element. And so I just feel very vulnerable and would like to have an enclosed garage so that I can come and go and remain in my home potentially for as long as I can. So there's and I also have 2 VRBOs that are, one's directly across my alley, which is like 10 or 15 feet. And they park their cars back there directly across from my carport. So I don't have, I don't know these people, you know, they're businesses. They're not conducive to becoming friends or neighbors or anything like that. And it's always different turnover. And while I believe the people are, you know, they get good people in there, but you just don't know. And they might not know they shouldn't leave things in their car there and all the traffic that's going through the alley. So that's another thing that's kind of significant to me to be concerned about. And I've lived there 31 years, and I'm really proud of being able to make changes to the house to bring it into the 21st century, but respect the heritage of it, because I do love old houses. There's not a straight wall or door in the place, you know? So you have to love it to live there. And it's important to me that I respect the history part of it. And so I just wanna do this final thing. I guess I see it as a final improvement to really make it purposeful for the next people coming along, as well as myself, of course. And I want to also thank you for doing this special meeting for us, because it's super important. And just
Forgot this one has a timer.
That was-
my time up.
That was your 5 minutes.
Okay,
So
but thank you.
You were wrapping up wonderfully, so thank you very
Okay,
much for
thank
sharing.
you.
And then if you could push the button again, that'll turn your microphone off. Thank you. Well, then with that, thank you very much for the both the factual and kind of the more kind of rounded picture that gives us. I will open it up for council deliberation. What are folks' thoughts on this?
I have no other questions. My question was satisfied. I appreciate Clay jumping in and giving me some background on that. So nothing else.
I have just one question. Thinking about making sure that it's actually accessible for you to get from the house to the garage. The enclosed garage will take you inside and be enclosed the entire way. Is that a correct understanding? Perfect. Love that. No, thanks for being here and thanks for your concern for historic preservation.
And at this point, we need to get a little more formal and we need to stop our interaction. Not that I'd love to talk with you after the meeting. No, that's okay. We're getting in the habit. Give a little background. We've had very few of these quasi judicial reviews in the past several years. Maybe you're in 2004 might have been one of the few we've had in the last, dozen or so years. And now we've had two in the last 2 months. And so we're out of practice in the more formal legalistic and want to make sure that, heaven forbid, there comes something very contentious ahead of us. We want to be prepared that we handle it properly. And so at this point, we're not allowed to do interaction and back and forth. So I just want to keep us on track there. And I'll share, this does not change the residential character of it. It doesn't change the massing of it, which is a big concern of mine, particularly kind of this section of town has a lower, kind of smaller massing than some of the other historic areas in town, which are bigger, more formal houses. That vernacular style of architecture is a big part of this neighborhood. And so I think this is very much in keeping with that.
Oh, I don't have anything to say, sorry.
No further questions?
It sounds like we are ready to take a motion then.
I will move to adopt the Historic Preservation Commission Order 2024-003.
I second.
Then we have a motion and a second, and we will do a roll call vote when Rachel has. I caught you mid note taking.
Okay, Commissioner Watson,
Approve?
Commissioner Mansfield, approve. Chair Woodruff,
Approve.
Commissioner Burkle,
Approved.
and Commissioner Engstrom.
Approved.
All right, thank you. Motion passes.
All right, well, I will thank you very much. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting or go and start your plans or start getting to work. Thank you so much for coming. I say to folks that kind of approve or disapprove, and I'm really glad we were able to approve. I want everybody who comes in front of our commission to feel like it was a positive experience, even if they, disagreed with our decision. So thank you for coming out and being a part of the process.
Thank you. I felt.
It's like I said, it's weird to sit in a room while people talk about your house. So thank you for engaging in that kind of weird process. And I will officially close the public hearing and we'll resume with our regular meeting, and the agenda puts us at, I think. Yeah, I think the main thing would just be a reminder of our next meeting date, which is, pardon me. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is August 27th. And is there anything for the good of the order?
So I have one item from staff. As I shared with a couple of you, Commissioner Hughes has not been able to attend yet this year because of personal reasons. Those could be considered excused. I am reaching out to her to see if she'd like to continue to be on this commission. But if this commission desired, you have the option to ask council to remove her for absences.
Good evening.
Because there's been no communication. So that is your decision. If you'd like to pursue that, I just want to let you know what your options are.
Is there a standard attendance policy that committees
Yeah.
use?
It's 75% of meetings,
Okay,
and she is missed
75% of meetings?
annually.
But annually, okay, okay.
But
Um,
we've had no communication from her?
We had one communication, Clay was able to get a hold of her. And she's said that, she's been ill and unable to attend. Like I said, that could be considered excused by the council or by this committee. We can, and I am happy to continue to try and reach out. So far, she hasn't been able to answer my calls recently. And just see if this is something she wants to continue to do or not. But I wanted to let you know what your options are going forward, because I know that sometimes it's challenging to hit quorum when we have one member down all the time.
You know, I'll take recommendations, but kind of my knee-jerk response is keep reaching out. If you don't hear by the August 27th meeting, we'll kind of talk about, because it, like you said, reaching quorum is important. And if we need to start the process of getting city council to add a new member, you know, I'd like to get that going, or, you know, get her back in the swing of things. So
Yep.
let's defer that till the August
Perfect.
27th.
I will continue to reach out, see if I can get in touch with Commissioner Hughes. And in addition to that, the annual recruitment drive for all of the, you know, every couple of years, so few positions roll over, will start, at the end of this month. So we'll be starting to recruit no matter what. And I haven't looked who's turned this up on here yet. So Deborah. So we'll have
Is
to.
that an audit? So is there a renewal
You can,
process?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, people can renew, they do have to reapply and be reappointed, but, I just thought I'd give you guys a heads up that that's coming up, so.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, that's all I had.
Then I will adjourn the meeting and thank everybody for coming out this evening.